everyone, I'm Stacy Danheiser, and I'm so happy to have you here. Today we're going to cover 5 shifts to generate massive revenue growth from your marketing programs. Now, I'm not really a car person, but I do love to drive fast. So I love this idea and this theme around acceleration. And this is not only to accelerate results from the marketing program for your company, but also to accelerate the results that you're seeing in your career as a marketer. Who did I write this for? Well, this is basically designed for anyone that's in a B2B marketing function working inside of any small or mid or large size company. Basically anyone who's responsible for developing and executing marketing plans, budgets, programs, and events, and proving the ROI from their efforts. In the next 45 minutes, I'm going to show you how to attract all the right customers without spending thousands of dollars on marketing programs that don't work, and how to focus only on the marketing tasks that create the greatest impact for your company, even if you have no idea what those are right now. How to equip the sales team with exactly what they need to consistently crush their quota and skyrocket revenue. I'm going to also show you a simple marketing action plan that delivers noticeable returns so you know exactly where every dollar is going. And finally, how to overcome this crisis of confidence that's facing today's marketers and finally earn that praise from your CEO and leadership team. My promise to you is a step-by-step roadmap to build a marketing plan that generates more leads, more sales, and proves ROI. Before we get into it, I want to do a check-in. Does this sound like you? Are you running 1,000,000 miles per hour? Spending hundreds of hours and dollars, creating marketing content and events that don't seem to make any traction? Are you confused about navigating all the possible marketing tactics you should focus your energy, time, budget on to get the biggest bang for your buck? Are you tired of producing marketing content for the sales team that never even gets used? That can be so frustrating, I know, after you've spent weeks to create something that they may have even requested, and then it just sits there on the shelf getting unused. Do you dread hearing what the next great marketing idea is from your CEO or sales team? Do you feel disconnected from what your customers really want and need from your company? And do you worry that if you can't prove how your marketing programs generate results, you'll lose your budget, or worse, your job? If any of that sounds like you, then I have some good news. None of those things are the real problem. Those are just symptoms. The real problem is that you haven't made what I call the shifts. And I'm going to tell you what those are in just a minute. But for right now, just know this. Once you make the shifts, you'll finally crack the code on what your sales team needs from marketing to close more business. You'll know exactly what to focus on to produce results from your marketing programs. You'll have a clear understanding of what your customers expect and want from you. And you won't have to execute every single marketing idea or whim that comes in from your internal peers. Worrying about spending your limited marketing dollars on the wrong tactics will be a thing of the past. And you'll find that you don't need to produce an unlimited amount of content or an unlimited amount of events or digital tactics to connect to your ideal customer. You'll remember why you took a job in marketing in the first place, and you'll do all of this while having the confidence and the enthusiasm and impact as a marketer within your company. Before we go too much further, let me just take 2 seconds to introduce myself so you know who I am and why you should listen to me. My name is Stacy Danheiser, and I'm the CEO of Shake Marketing Group located in Denver, Colorado. I have 15 years experience leading marketing and sales programs inside of mid to large size enterprise companies across several different industries. In my career, I've spent equal time in both strategy and execution. Recently, I co-authored a book called Valuology, which is an actionable guide to teach marketing and sales professionals how to create value propositions that win business. My specialty is in helping B2B organizations communicate their value to ideal customers and hyper-focus their marketing efforts to generate sales. And I work with everybody from small businesses all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. And the thing that I really actually love the most is working with and teaching other marketers, as I think we have the coolest job, but sometimes it can feel super overwhelming, undervalued, and frustrating. Let me tell you about how I discovered these 5 shifts. So I mentioned that I spent 15 years in a corporate marketing function. And during that time, I got to work with all kinds of marketers and salespeople. And I noticed that there were some that were really successful and some that were barely getting by. So when I finally went out on my own, I started working with B2B clients. And I noticed there as well that there was a big gap between companies that were seeing results from their marketing programs and companies that were floundering and throwing money at every new trendy tactic or software. And here I discovered that there were 5 things that the top marketers always did in order to produce results and earn a seat at the table and get the value and the praise finally from the leadership team and enjoy their job more than ever. So I started sharing this with my clients, and they got unbelievable results, like double the engagement on their marketing content, an increase by 25% of qualified leads within 1 month, and 18% revenue growth year over year. Not to mention that they increased better internal collaboration, they had more clarity around what they were doing, and a higher job satisfaction. So there are 5 key shifts that you must make in order to make your marketing programs more effective and impactful. And now I want to share those with you. So shift number 1. This is a mindset shift that I want to cover with you first, and then we'll get on to the good stuff. And that is, don't skip the basics. It does not matter what your job title is, or where you sit in the organization, or how much experience you have. The reality is, if you want to make an impact, you have to master the basics first. Without this, you will build your programs on wobbly ground. Now, this might seem boring and mundane, but it's critical to have a solid foundation before you move on. There is no silver bullet or magic portal that will allow you to skip this step. And there's some debate going on in marketing circles today that marketers are coming out of school and becoming highly specialized, which is a good thing for organizations, but it's also meaning that the marketer has missed out on the opportunity to be a generalist and understanding really how everything connects. So think about it like when you were learning to drive a car. You got the keys, then you had to learn how to get comfortable with your seat, the mirrors, and all the controls and buttons in there. Then you had to learn that you could only use your right foot to move between the gas and the brakes, and you had to use your hands at the same time to steer. Finally, you had to get comfortable driving on side streets and parking lots before you could even take the car out on the highway. And after lots of practice, and maybe even a couple of years, only then did you have the confidence to master a cross-country road trip. Now, imagine if you had tried to skip the basics when you were learning how to drive, not knowing which feet to use, and jumping straight onto the highway going 70 miles per hour. You would have been terrified to ever drive again. Similarly, with marketing, there are just some basic principles that you have to get right before you jump into executing tactics. So what are those basics? The truth is, your job as a marketing professional is to connect the dots. And I'd like to think of this in 3 ways. Connecting the dots, number 1, to your customers. This is understanding what your customer cares about and connecting it to what your company does and how you can solve their problem. This, of course, implies that you are spending time with customers, learning about their pain points and their challenges and their motivations, and that you understand how to position your solution as the answer to their problems. But oftentimes, I see marketers forgetting this principle. And I know this because when I ask them how frequently they get in front of customers, they tell me it's once or twice a year. So what are they doing the rest of the time? They're executing on marketing plans and sitting in internal meetings. So speaking of internal alignment, the second principle is about connecting the dots to your sales team. There is a reason that 90% of the content that marketing creates is never used by sales, because marketers forget that the sales team is also their customer. They're just an internal customer. And they are creating content that does not help the sales team advance the conversation with the customer. So in order to do so, it's really understanding what the salesperson's job is and what they need to be successful. And finally, your marketing programs must connect to company goals. Now, sadly, 80% of CEOs said they do not trust or are unimpressed with their CMO. And last year, it was predicted that about 30% of CEOs would fire their CMO. As Forrester Research points out, they lose touch with developing their art and science acumen to survive. Or in other words, being able to look at the data, make informed decisions related back to the direction of the business, and putting a creative spin on it. And this is true because when I talk to CEOs, this is often their number 1 frustration. They tell me that they're just not confident in what their marketing team is doing and how they're spending their money. So I want you guys to ask yourself, how much of my time is really being spent on better understanding these 3 areas? Okay, shift number 2. Shiny objects do not produce results. Okay, you guys have probably heard of the shiny object syndrome, which is basically being distracted by all of those shiny objects, and once we get to them, we quickly lose interest. Now, we're bombarded with these things every single day. They're buzzworthy trends that we hear about. We hear about technology and tactics that's producing and promising amazing results for certain competitors. Or kind of like this fake news article here touting 2,000 marketing tactics that you need to implement to drive success. As a marketer, you may be super tempted to follow what your competitors are doing or commit to doing 100 different events this year because your CEO likes to be visible in the market, or implementing the newest technology in hopes of big gains. Now, I've personally invested thousands of hours and time learning about different techniques and tools, and guess what happened? Absolutely nothing, because I did not give my full attention and focus to it. It was on my radar one day and then off of it the next. So don't fall into this trap. They are all just a distraction, keeping you from focusing on the key set of initiatives that will actually move your business forward. There are literally thousands of different marketing technologies and tools and approaches you can take. But if you continue chasing shiny objects, it's just going to lead to poor results, wasted time and money, and more likely extreme burnout from trying and failing way too many times. So if you stop and recognize that it does not matter what your competitors are doing or what the latest and greatest marketing technology or tool is, it is all about focusing your energy on producing first what your customers want and need to be educated and successful. Keeping in mind that technology is there to help, that's part number 2, only after you've discovered that. So how do you really tap into what your customers want? So remember, we just covered that it is essential for marketers to connect the dots for their customer. And in order to do that, you need to focus on answering these 4 key areas about your buyer. So the first is the who and the how. So we start here with, who is your ideal customer? And we start here because what I see many companies do is they define this at a very surface level, maybe by geography, everybody who's living in the state of Wisconsin, or by industry, every customer who's in the oil and gas industry. But they're not really diving into the details and really understanding what makes that customer ideal for their business. So for example, which customers are the most profitable? Or which customers are the most likely to buy your product? Or frankly, just the type of people you like to work with the most. All of that can inform who your ideal customer set is. Once you understand who that is, then you need to go on to understand how decisions are made. Do they have to involve others in the process? And if so, what's everyone's role and responsibility in that process? And how are decisions really made within that organization? Next is to go into what. So this is understanding what are the top challenges and problems that are facing your buyer. What are their top priorities? What are they trying to achieve for the year? What are their goals and objectives? And then a more emotional one is, what are their motivations and aspirations? So they're not all just driven by business outcomes, but there is an element of emotion to anybody doing a job, even in a corporate environment, where there might be certain things where you say, okay, well, one of their motivations is to not get fired, or on the flip side, maybe one of their motivations is to get promoted. Next, move on to understand why. So why do they need a solution? What sort of triggers occur in your industry that prompt a buyer to start looking for a solution? So this could be something really simple all the way up to very complex. And so one example would be, let's say you sell laptops. You could say, well, in my industry, people keep their laptop really until they drop it on the ground, or until they've moved, they have kids in college and they need to buy a new laptop for their kid as they're going off to college. So it's really just sort of understanding all of those different trigger points as to why somebody would make a purchase. And then the secondary part of this is, why should they choose you over your competitors? So keeping in mind that all of your buyers have choices. And you need to really sort of dig into the why behind what they're motivated around and why ultimately they would end up choosing you versus somebody else. And that could be something, we often hear, well, the number one reason that customers are choosing a solution is because they have the most competitive price. But in reality, that's usually when we do customer surveys, we find that that's number 10 or 11 on the list. They're more interested in the service aspect, maybe some technical features and functionality, or what does the sales cycle look like, and what sort of support are they getting in education along the way to help them be smarter in their business. So all of those are factors that go into that. And then finally, look at where. So what are the sources of information that your buyer looks at to become educated on your solution and in your industry? Do they attend events or read publications or website? And if so, that's what you want to start really diving into and understanding how they are interpreting that information and potentially use that as leverage later when you're putting together your marketing strategy. That's what you really want to focus your time and attention on. So I want you to ask yourself here, do I really know the answer to these questions? And if not, then mark them as a gap so you can begin to start to investigate this. Okay, shift number 3 is use the secret weapon. And the secret weapon is what I call the B2B marketing blueprint. This is really your secret weapon to building a marketing plan that gets real results. More leads, more sales, and better ROI on your marketing efforts. And really what that is a documented marketing strategy. Sadly, only 48% of marketers even have a documented marketing strategy. So if your marketing plan is just in your head, guess what? It's not likely to get executed. And without a documented marketing plan or goals written down, you don't know what to execute, what to measure, how to stabilize your team, or what to adjust when things are not working. It would be like showing up at the airport for a trip to Greece without a passport, a plane ticket, or any idea of what you're going to do when you get there. But marketers that have a documented strategy are, get this, 538% more likely to report success than those who don't. Just think about that for a second. What would that do for your company and for your career if you were 538% more successful? A university professor also found that people who write down their goals, review them consistently, and share their goals with friends or colleagues are 33% more successful in achieving those goals than people who just had goals. So let's talk about what the old way of marketing looks like. I like to say it starts with this screw the plan mentality and an overall assumption that you've been in business long enough to know exactly what the customer thinks, needs, and wants. So skip the research. That moves on to creating a generic message aimed at communicating a long list of generic customer benefits, or what I like to call the kitchen sink approach, listing every single possible pain point or benefit that a customer might have so that you don't accidentally leave somebody out. Then it starts with creating loads of content. Blogs, brochures, white papers, sales presentations, webinars, social media posts, events. Really not having a plan or a purpose because that's what the internet says to do, and oversaturating your marketing and sales pitches with a product-led, product features base instead of real and tailored customer benefits. Then you move on to aim this at as many people as possible. So rather than a targeted approach, this is a mass marketing or mass advertising approach to getting your content out to as many people as possible, regardless if they're the right customer or not. And then implementing every single new tech and tactic underneath the sun. Now, you guys may have heard kind of the phrase before that there's nothing new under the sun, and that is true. Everything that is, there might be new technologies and things making our lives easier and more productive, but in reality, these are all just kind of basic principles that they're making more productive. And then finally, it's relying on hope as a strategy, crossing your fingers, saying a little prayer, and hoping that things will work out and result in a customer. And then finally, it's really having no idea what to measure, what's working or what's not, so you repeat this cycle all over again. And in the end, this results in about 43% of marketers who report lackluster results from their efforts. So this approach sucks. doesn't it? So let's talk about the new way. And one of my favorite quotes here from Morris Chang: "Without strategy, execution is aimless. And without execution, strategy is useless." So the B2B marketing blueprint is a combination. It starts with step number 1, an audit. It's an audit of what's working and what's not. Getting really clear about what's driving result and what's just creating noise. And then killing anything that is not producing great results. Why keep doing it if it's not working? Number 2 is research. This is learning everything that you can about your customers, the market, and competitors. Now, often I see marketers skip this step. And when I ask what sort of customer research they do, they'll point to a customer satisfaction survey that they've sent out, or maybe a customer loyalty survey that's gone out. But really, this is an ongoing process to constantly be in touch with what your customers care about. I mean, think about how frequently you change your mind and your opinion. That's happening with your customers as well. Secondly, it's looking at market data. So do you subscribe, for example, to Google alerts about the industries in which your customers are operating? Or do you read publications in your industry as well as in the industries that your customers are operating in? And then finally, doing a competitor analysis. So this can come in a couple of different flavors, but depending on what you are responsible for in your organization, you might be looking at the competition from a product standpoint, trying to understand and get a better grasp on what their product does versus what your product does. Or if you're on the marketing and communication side of the house, you may be looking at what your competitors are saying on their website and how they're communicating and what sort of tactics they're investing in, such as white papers or webinars or infographics. So this is just having sort of a handle on what the competition is doing so that you can ultimately stand out. Number 3 is targeting. So you cannot be everything to everyone. And unless you have an unlimited amount of money, you really need to focus your efforts on where you think you can make the biggest impact. So here it's defining who your ideal customer is, and we kind of talked about that previously. So it's just getting very, very crystal clear that you're okay to move on and to say no to some clients if they're not fitting that ideal structure. Number 4 is your value proposition. So what is a value proposition? It is a promise of future results to your client. And so you have to communicate this in a way that is relevant to what they are trying to achieve in their business, but also is something that makes your solution unique and stand out. So this is all about measuring, communicating your value, not in terms of product features, which is what we see a lot of companies doing, but communicating your value in terms of results. So for example, you would not, if you're a software company, you would not say, my value proposition is that we have the fastest productivity software out there, and you can deploy this thing in 15 days and get everybody up and running. I mean, while that's kind of a benefit, I guess faster, you're making the customer connect the dots to what that means to their organization. So a better one would be to say, our value proposition, our software allows you to increase employee productivity by 10% within 2 weeks. So there, you're measuring it, you're giving them a specific time frame. Now, side story on this, since this is what our whole book is about that I shared earlier, that I co-wrote earlier last year, the amount of executives, 95% of executives, say that they want their vendors to quantify the value and basically prove ROI of the solution that they're offering. But guess what? Only 5% of companies are currently doing this. And when we work with clients, the number one reason we hear as to why they're not doing it is they tell us it's just too hard. So think about that for a second and whether or not that's something that you could measure in your business, and are you willing to do the work to figure it out? Because if you are, then you will automatically stand out because 95% of companies are not doing it. Okay, number 5 is content planning. So the truth is that you do not have to create a massive amount of content. That's some of the advice out there, and it's just, as you can see, marketers are continuing to invest more and more and more money in content, yet they're still reporting kind of lackluster results. And the reason for that is because what they're creating, they're having a quantity mindset, not a quality mindset. So here, customers have 5 stages of decisions to make. So organize your content to help them be prepared to answer those questions in the 5 stages that they go through. And I'll talk to you in a little bit about that. I have a model that I want to share with you guys. Okay, and then finally, step 6 is to write it all down. So this is setting realistic goals, or as I like to say, connecting the dots from what your organization is trying to achieve to how this translates to marketing activity. So put it into writing, and then not only do you want to put it into writing, but you want to communicate all of your goals and activities with the rest of your organization. And you want to have a very clear way to track and measure each area. So for example, if you're suggesting that your organization start a blog, and you want to have, one or 2 articles a day or 1 or 2 articles a week, really think about how you want to measure the impact and the success. What is the purpose of the blog? And how would you drive traffic to the blog? And what are you going to do when people finish reading the blog article? So there's kind of all the way through so that you can present that back to your organization and connect those dots that the reason we're starting a blog is because we're trying to create awareness in our specific community that we're around. And we're going to do it by doing X, Y, and Z. So you really need to just get clear. Now, step 7, which is not a little blue box on here, is to execute. And so right now, though, when you move into step 7, you're certain and clear and confident that you're executing the right things. All of this then ideally turns into customers. And then the process repeats. So you do a continuous review of what's working and what's not so that you don't waste your time or your energy or your money. Now, what I often see companies do is they actually skip all those steps, or maybe they do some type of shortcut version or pared down, watered down version, and they move straight to step 7, execute. And then they wonder later, after a month or a year, after investing a whole bunch of time and energy in creating stuff, why nothing's working. I'll give you an example of that. So this is a case study of one of our clients, which is an IT recruiting firm. So their challenge was that they had a growing sales team, but they had no consistent message or way to communicate with the market. And as a smaller business, they were constantly wasting their time on learning all these new one-off approaches and marketing tactics and failing really to understand what clients wanted or needed from them. They were unclear what to focus on from a marketing perspective to drive that awareness and growth. And they ended up spending a lot of money on what I would call random marketing tactics with no real results to show for it. So after working with us, we spent a lot of time back in the research phase, and it was the first time that they had ever really conducted customer research. And they were really surprised that the aha, as they say here in their own words, the aha moment was when we realized that what we were pitching to clients as our differentiator wasn't really what they cared about. And I see this happen a lot of times when I ask what's the value internally to a group of folks. I will get completely different answers than what the customers validate then and say this is the correct thing and the reason why they chose that business in the first place. And here they say we now have a consistent way to present our company and we have disciplined execution. So one of the side benefits from that is that they get to delete all of those cold sales emails that come in daily, promising a new video tactic that's going to work, or a new SEO tactic that's going to work, or a new infographic tool that's going to work to drive massive results. So the result of all of this is that this company has been on the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing company list for the past few years. So pretty awesome what it can do when you just kind of go back to really, again, the client mindset and understanding what it is that your customer is trying to achieve and putting yourself in those shoes. Okay, so shift number 4, relevance is king. Now, you've heard the phrase that content is king, but this is misguided. There are over 15 petabytes of data created every minute. I don't even know what a petabyte is, but it sounds like it's a lot. So don't contribute to the noise. The difference between building a winning marketing plan and a losing one is not going to be judged by the amount of content that you produce. It's judged by how relevant and how consistent your content and your story is to prospective customers. So sticking with our car analogy, every single piece of tech that goes into a car needs to serve a purpose. There's no use for extra gadgets. If you continue to produce massive amounts of irrelevant content, not only will your stuff end up in the digital or the literal trash bin, but your customers will disengage with your organization, as 95% of C-level executives have claimed to do so with companies that bombarded them with irrelevant content. On top of that, you can be assured that your sales team will just create their own materials, which I know as a marketer it makes everybody cringe because they just aren't getting what they need from the marketing department. When you shift your focus, though, to only producing content that's relevant, high quality, and meaningful to your customers, your sales team will thank you for finally giving them what they need, and your efforts will pay off in the form of leads, engagement, and customer loyalty. So how do you do that? Well, this is the buyer's journey. We like to suggest that you focus on creating content for the buyer's journey. So there are 5 decision points that any customer goes through when they are deciding to buy a new product or service. It starts at the top. So this is the awareness phase. And here your customer really is trying to answer the question, should I solve this problem? This goes back to understanding what are those trigger points that have to occur before somebody makes a decision to change what they are doing today. So everything may be somewhat working okay. Maybe they're complacent, they have a current vendor they don't really love, but until the thing breaks, or until maybe their sales rep leaves, or until the company decides they're no longer going to support the product that that customer's buying, chances are they may just stay year after year in some contract for a solution that's mediocre because they resist making that change. Change is really hard for all of us from a human standpoint, and so we try our best to avoid it. So something major has to happen. And what you do for content purposes here is focus on the problem. You don't give them solutions, you just talk over and over and over about the problem and how that problem appears in their daily life, how that problem is affecting their job, how that problem is affecting their company, how that problem may be affecting relationships, or job satisfaction. And there's a whole opportunity to explore the problem from both a rational standpoint as well as from a emotional standpoint, just to get people to kind of bring them to the truth that, wow, I think I really need to change something. So ultimately, let's say they decide, yes, I do want to solve this problem. So then they move on to stage 2, education. So here they're exploring their options to solve this problem. So let's say that you sell online courses. So somebody here is looking at, well, okay, I'm interested in getting some training. So what are my options to get training? Well, I could take an online course. That's one thing. I could go to an in-person event or seminar. That's another thing. I could hire a mentor or a coach. That's another thing. I could ask somebody or look around on the internet for free advice or free tutorials. So you want to list out sort of all of the different options and understand that this is what your customer is sort of wrestling with here is what are all the options. Now, ideally, what your sales team is trying to do here is get in around this awareness or education phase. They want to be the ones who are educating the buyer and setting the buying criteria in their favor, in the favor of your product or your company. So without going into a sales pitch, this is more just planting the seed that, going back to the online course, maybe one of the big pain points here is, hey, yeah, but you're not going to have 24/7 access. And maybe that's something that's really important to the buyer. So you want to kind of plant the seed that this on-demand 24/7 access, you can do the course anytime, and make that more important in the minds of the buyers. So does that make sense? Then the customer moves on. Comparison. So now they're looking at the best solution out there. So again, let's say they go with the online course. Okay, they've decided online course is the way to go. Now they're comparing 2 different or 3 different online courses. So this is getting an understanding of this is really more, I think, where getting a better understanding of your competition comes into play, because what we see is a lot of companies have the same watered down message here, and they're not really clear what their process is, or they're not really clear how their solution stands out, and they're not really clear what their value proposition is or why it's different than the competitors. And so if you're not clear here, then what happens? Your customer ends up making their decision based on who has the lowest price. So that's really what you want to avoid. So again, getting an understanding of that and knowing that your customer is at some point going to be comparing you to what your competitors are doing. Now, let's say they've decided that they're going to work with you. So they've made the decision. This purchase phase is relatively short, but it's also very impactful. So how easy are you making the buying process? For example, if your organization sends out RFPs, does it take weeks to get pricing information? Do you have to involve 3 or 4 different people to get sign-off and approval during this piece? Really, your job at this stage is to make it as easy as possible for the buyer and to communicate sort of what they can expect during the contract phase. Here's, and it's being very forthcoming and having really clear communication. Now, a lot of times as marketers, that might not necessarily fall to you. It might be more living in the sales world. But just understanding what that process is and where the hang-up may be. For example, I was working with one client who the sales team was primarily in charge of this phase, but one of the major frustrations with customers during this part of the process was that it took over a week or 2 to get pricing information. And then when the pricing information came back, it was in this convoluted, overwhelming spreadsheet. So from a marketing standpoint, think about if that's your organization and how you could present that, how you could present pricing options in a really straightforward, intuitive way so that they understand it. And then finally, confirm. So this is after the buyer has made a purchase, they can move very quickly into this confirm bucket, followed by buyer's remorse. So immediately what they want to know is, did I make the right choice? Or are they regretting the decision that they just made? And so what you can do here to make things easier, again, from a marketing standpoint, is what's the onboarding process? And how is that being communicated? And is there some type of welcome package or welcome phone call? Kind of all of those touch points and evaluating all of those touch points to make that stage really, really smooth. And then this stage lasts for a little bit because they might keep their product for a couple of years before they're ready to renew, at which point they kind of start the whole cycle all over again. Or they may be so frustrated with your organization because this is really kind of where more of like the service delivery comes in. What sort of ongoing e-newsletters or information or education do they receive? Are they getting the most benefit from the product? And you'll see this happen a lot with software companies. So if you sell a software, this is a critical stage, the onboarding process, giving people some immediate tasks and immediate wins to experience the software, but then having more advanced training and tutorials and touch points later on down the line to make sure that they're getting the full value out of the software. So I know I've presented a lot here. Hopefully that made sense. And just one other note, while this looks like it's a linear process and very circular, the reality is that most buyers might move from awareness to comparison. They might end up getting pricing. They don't really like what they're seeing, or they don't love the options, and they'll move right back to awareness. They'll just start sitting on the solution that they already have in place, and they'll just be complacent until, again, some other trigger happens. So really, this whole journey is about presenting value all along the chain. Okay, so I'll give you another case study of a client that used this effectively. It was a financial services company, and their challenge is that they had basically a tribal knowledge approach to understanding the clients. They had a lot of very seasoned sales reps and marketing reps and leadership in the company, but nothing was documented, and it was a real struggle to try to create any sort of marketing content. They needed to end up capturing this because they wanted to better equip the marketing and the sales teams, and they were getting ready to expand their team, so they really needed a more efficient way to communicate that. And then they just weren't clear what content to produce to help the client make a decision. They were going with that, moving straight to execution phase, looking at, hey, well, the competition is producing these types of brochures, so therefore we should be producing brochures. So the results of all this, we worked with them, and we outlined their specific buyer's journey, and then we did a content mapping exercise to really understand and dive into all of the touch points that a customer in their industry would need to make a decision as they move through that journey. The result of that is here they in their words, with Shake Marketing's expertise, we were able to develop buyer personas and map our customer journey. This was a huge step towards evolving our integrated marketing and sales approach. We now feel confident that our marketing content is truly resonating with the right audience. And they ended up receiving a STAR Award, which is a program in the financial services industry that recognizes excellence in marketing and communications and innovation. So they continue to just knock it out of the park as it relates to developing materials that their customers really want and that help educate them and ultimately move them to making a decision to say yes. Okay, shift number 5 is our final shift, and that is to invest in mentoring. So this one is all about accelerating your success. If you really want to get ahead, you need to invest in a mentor or a coach. The best and the brightest did not get there on their own. They had strong mentors surrounding them that had already been there and done that and could provide guidance and reassurance based on their experience. Now imagine you can literally save years and thousands of dollars by learning from other people's mistakes. So how is mentoring different from training? Well, a trainer may tell you what to do. So think functionally, like how to set up a new marketing automation tool or technology. But they are just there to teach you that one new skill. They're not going to be there to motivate you and provide advice on how to reach your goals or counsel you through a setback. And I love some of these statistics about mentoring. So only 12% of learners apply what they've learned, the skills from the training that they received, to their jobs. So that's a lot of wasted time and energy going through training that you never apply to your job. But look at this. When training is combined with coaching, individuals increase their productivity by an average of 86% compared with 22% who just do training alone. And then get this, 75% of private sector executives say mentoring was critical to their career development and success. So one of the most important ways to get ahead, of course, is to first make the commitment to learning, to continually seek advice and guidance from experts who have been there and done that. And why is that? Well, you may have seen Malcolm Gladwell's theory that it takes 10,000 hours to master new concepts. So that would be like studying all of this stuff that I just presented full-time, 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. That's 5 years in a row to just become proficient and mastery at that. So seeking mentors and experts can really help you drastically shorten all that down and on your way to reaping rewards. All right, guys. Well, today I promised to show you how to attract all the right customers without spending thousands of dollars on marketing programs that don't work. How to focus only on the marketing tasks that create the greatest impact for your company, even if you have no idea what those are right now. How to equip the sales team with exactly what it is that they need to consistently crush their quota and skyrocket revenue. I showed you a simple marketing action plan, 6 steps to be exact, that deliver noticeable returns so you know exactly where every dollar is going. And how to overcome the crisis of confidence facing today's marketers and finally earn praise from your CEO and leadership team. So I showed you what you need to win. 5 shifts. Number 1, you cannot skip the basics. This is all about connecting the dots to your customers, to your sales team, and to your company goals. Number 2, shiny objects don't produce results. Don't get distracted. Stay focused only on the things that your customers really want and need from your organization to make a decision. Number 3, use the secret weapon, a blueprint. Stop skipping to step number 7 and just start executing. Really, you have to do the work, the foundation, to dive into what your customers want. And only then can you really, really, really stand out from everybody else out there. Number 4 showed you that relevance is king. It's not about content, it's about relevant content. And then finally, number 5, invest in mentoring. So these 5 shifts alone are enough to start seeing massive results from your marketing program and to help accelerate your career. But now you have a choice. You can either take all the information I've given you and you can forget all about it. You can continue grinding out irrelevant content, being at the beck and call of the sales team, and generally frustrated with your job and your results. Or if you really want to propel your career to the next level, guys, focus on communicating your company's value with confidence and authority, while also boosting your customer knowledge and directing your marketing dollars and energy to the things that matter most, then here's what I have for you. How I can help. My team and I have set aside some time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas to your business today. Whatever your biggest challenges are, we have seen it and we can help you overcome it. During this call, we'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and we'll talk about and work with you to create a step-by-step marketing action plan that gets results. We're going to get clear on what's working and what's not about your marketing programs today, who your ideal customer is, what your marketing goals are for this year, and the cost for all of this is it's absolutely free. But there is a catch. Who is this for? This session is not for everyone. This is for marketers that are serious about getting results from their programs. Okay, you must be willing to scrap what's not working and try a new approach. And you must be an action taker. It's easy to get caught up in overthinking things, but we want you to move past the fear or procrastination and take action to get the results that you want to see. So if that's you, then book a session now. All right, so you probably are wondering, why the heck are we doing this? Well, we love giving back and helping marketers achieve their goal. Okay, we do this because, as I mentioned, I was a marketer in that environment for a really long time, and I had some ups and downs in my career, and I wanted more marketers to experience the ups. And I found that when you get a seat at the table and when you earn the respect of your leadership team and of your sales team, all of a sudden your job satisfaction grows, your overall just happiness goes up, and that you remember why you got into marketing in the first place. It's one of the best jobs in the world. We get to do both the art and the science. So really, I just don't want you to be frustrated or confused or ready to give up on that. Plus, we know that you might want some help to transform your marketing approach. If so, we can discuss it and see if it's a good fit for both of us. And if not, that's fine too. Just go to the link here. And you might also see a little pop-up box, and if you do, just click on that. When you click on the button, you're going to be taken to a calendar page. Just pick something that's convenient for you, that works with your schedule, and then you'll see a short 2 or 3 question application. Just fill it out quickly and get ready for our 45-minute session. It'll be the best time that you've spent working on your business. All right, guys, I just want to leave you with this. It's been awesome spending this time together. And think about this quote: knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice. So thank you very, very, very much. It was an honor to spend this time together. And again, here's the link if you are interested in booking that session, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.